Nos faida vonadigion a vonadigasai. Croeso ir cuvuniad heno. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's presentation. Now, before we kick off, there's a couple of announcements. The first announcement is Lorna produces this, and friends produce this great booklet about everything that's on in Llanfaelog and Rosnagor and surround, and you'll be getting one probably through your letterbox. And if you'd like to help Lorna with distribution, she's over there. Thanks, Lorna. The other thing is that Think Rosnagor are having a dinner here, a Christmas dinner on the 14th of December. If you're on the email list, you'll have had an invitation, and we'd be delighted to see as many of you as possible there. So, neodymium yttrium aluminium garnet are affectionately known as ND-YAG, refers to a laser medium in which the neodymium ions are doped into a host crystal of yttrium aluminium garnet.
It does, it sounds Welsh, doesn't it?
Now, this type of laser is commonly used for machining applications due to its high power, precision, and ability to work with a variety of materials. It is especially effective in cutting, welding, and engraving metals and other hard materials. Our speaker tonight, Professor Ian Tuersley, Emeritus Professor at Warwick University, is an aerospace apprentice, chartered engineer, and materials scientist who knows a lot about ND-YAG. And, in fact, wrote 2 papers about ND-YAG laser machining of silicon carbide fiber borosilicate glass composites.
It was more than that, actually, but yes.
However, this evening, he's not going to talk about ND-YAG. And I know, I can feel your disappointment. Now, Ian started out on his journey as an apprentice to Rolls-Royce at Leavesden near Watford, enjoying the luxury of being paid to study, unlike his older penniless student brother, who was green with envy.
It's true.
As Ian says himself, he did his apprenticeship at Hogwarts because the very aircraft hangar he worked in became the Harry Potter studio following a damaging fire at nearby Pinewood Studios. But Ian is also not going to tell us about Harry Potter movies.
No.
For the last 12 years, Ian has been the project director for teams of undergraduate students who have designed and built human-powered racing submarines to participate in the international submarine races held in the US and the European equivalent held in Gosport in the UK. Ian's talk will explain why he is passionate about this, what is actually involved, and how it is developing into something that may just help save the world. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it first at Think Rosnagor. Please put your hands together for a warm welcome for our speaker, Ian Tuersley.
Thank you very much indeed, Bill. I'd forgotten all about the neodymium YAG stuff. That's quite a long time ago, but thank you for that. It gets better. It could have been about a lot of things. When Mark first asked me to do this, he was aware of the fact I'd spent a lot of time lecturing on statistics and engineering business management and seriously some stuff that you don't. The answer to the question, would you like to do a module on statistics, is quite clearly no. So I fell back on the comfortable bit. People say if you're going to do something like this, talk about something you enjoy. For most of the time I was at university, you just do the stuff that needs doing, but this was the bit that I actually enjoyed. I retired 2 years ago. I got them to make me an emeritus professor specifically so that I can maintain an involvement in this activity. And I hope you find it as interesting as I have. It's about the international submarine races and the students that I looked after for 12 years taking part in this. And what I'm intending to try and cover in the time available is, why do we do it? Why would you want to get in a submarine and try and race it? What is it that we get up to? That's the good bit. With what outcome? What's the result of all this messing about? And finally, the thing I felt I had to put in, when I wrote that abstract that Bill's just read out for you, and I said, how it's developing in something that might just save the world. Of course, I ran it past the wife, and in the way that only somebody who knows you really, really well can say, she just gave me that look and said, really? Well, actually, maybe. I'll leave it to you to decide at the end. But yeah, it will look at that. So let's start off with the first bit. Why do we do this? Indulge me for a moment, because I think to understand what this is fundamentally about, it would help if I gave you a little bit of the context of why a bunch of students over 12 years and counting at Warwick University have entered into this activity. You need to understand how we teach engineering degrees. It's not just Warwick. Almost everybody does it in a very similar way, frankly. This looks complicated, but all this is saying is the Warwick engineering degrees, and we do loads of them. We do mechanical, civil, electrical, electronic, manufacturing, automotive, and so on. You'll see the list in a moment. But when a student applies to Warwick, an approach that we take, others as well, but not everybody, we just take people on as general engineering. And for the first year and a half, everybody does the same course. All of the basic stuff of engineering, the maths, the design, the thermodynamics, the fluid mechanics, all of the basic science, we put that in the first 1.5 years, almost 2. And you only really specialise into the stream of engineering that you thought, as you left school, you might be interested in. Because bear in mind, when you leave school, you probably don't really know much about what a civil engineer does, rather than any other type. And so we give them a year and a half or so to decide what piques their interest. And it's only really halfway through year 2 that we ask them to decide, well, what sort of engineer would you like to progress with? And they go into year 3 and start doing stuff that's specialised according to their chosen discipline. And at the end of that, they can, if they want, graduate with a bachelor's engineering degree. What's much more common these days, and it's got a lot to do with their desire to become professional chartered engineers, the bachelors will only qualify them partly for professional qualification. If you want to do the full academic component of professional registration, you really these days need a master's degree. And so almost everywhere does this as an integrated master's over 4 years. Can get a bit confusing because a lot of them choose to take their 4th year and go and do some stuff in industry to get some experience of the real world, and so they come back for their 5th year. So this final bit on the right-hand side might be year 4, it might be year 5, depending on whether they've taken an intercalated year. But the important thing really for what we're talking about tonight is project work. All of the professional institutions that qualify graduate engineers insist that their graduates have undertaken a lot of project stuff, because that's basically what engineers end up doing for a living. Whether you're HS2 or Crossrail or anything, you're essentially a project manager. Sometimes it's small research teams, sometimes it's huge teams of people, but engineers typically work with a lot of other people, often other disciplines of engineering, to manage big projects. Big or small projects. So in your 3rd year, every degree course I can think of in the country in engineering would set them an individual project, and it's a major component of that final year for the bachelor's degree. If they stick around for the master's, then at Warwick what we do is we get them to do a group project, and we put them into a team of about 6, 7, maybe 8, and not necessarily from their own stream. So we mix them up a bit. We get the mechanical engineers and the electrical and the systems working in teams to a group project. And it's really this bit that I'm going to be talking to you about tonight. So the sort of things that we do at Warwick, and I had to look this up because it's 2 years since I left them. I used to be their Director of Studies and knew this stuff inside out. But these are the streams that they do at Warwick. You'll notice the complete absence of marine engineering. Engineering and business management is down the bottom there in blue because we only do that to a bachelor's level, but that doesn't really matter. But those are the other streams that we do. So when it comes to that 4th year group project, these are some examples of the sort of things that we set them. Typically, with the number of students we've got, and with teams of 6, 7, 8 students, we tend to be running about 25 of these each year. And these are some examples. Now, some of them would delight and impress you a lot. WooSat, for instance, halfway down there, Warwick Satellite. We've had a team that for some years now has worked with the European Space Agency to put a cube satellite about yay big into orbit, and I think the Warwick team are the only student team to get an orbiting satellite communicating with the ground station successfully. And they're quite significant players, tracking animals across the deserts or something like that. But you know, they've done some very worthwhile stuff. Any of you who've got any experience of engineering degrees and all that sort of thing may already be familiar with this one at the bottom here, Formula Student. This started in America a number of years ago, came to the UK. The Institution of Mechanical Engineers have run this very successfully for a number of years. Basically, well, every engineering college I'm aware of in the UK will have a student team who build, I don't know if how easily you can see the little photo at the bottom there. They're similar to Formula Ford, but they design, build, and then go in the summer to Silverstone and race their Formula student cars in competition with loads of other universities. And some of these projects are focused very much on my colleagues' research interests, but notably, some of them are involved in, like Formula Student, like the one above it, mobile robotics, creating rescue robots for disaster zones and things like that. And there's international competitions for this sort of stuff. A number of years ago, a colleague of mine made me aware of an international competition that was doing this with submarine racing. May sound a bit bizarre, but I'll show you what it's about. So what do we do? What is this about? The Warwick Human-Powered Submarine Team. The objective of this is ultimately for our student teams to design and build a human-powered submarine according to the rules and regulations that are set down by the international submarine races. And like Formula Student, this came out of America. It started off in America and then later came to Europe, basically because one of the key people involved in America got a chair at Bath University, and so he interested Bath in doing it. He now works in Rheinval in Germany, and so guess what? They've got a team there as well. But the annual competitions, they alternate between the US, the international submarine races, and then we have a European equivalent that happens in the intervening years. And, well, it's supposed to be in Europe, but it has always been, to date, in the UK, largely because of the legacy of the Royal Navy. We've got the facilities, which I'll be showing you in a moment. So the European thing happens in Gosport on the south coast, and in the alternate years. The ISR, sponsored by the Foundation for Underwater Research and Education, FURE, hosted biannually by a facility. It's just outside Washington. It's a US Navy facility. They point out when you sign up for the thing, don't pay any attention to the ordnance on the right as you come through the gate. It's not there. It's a Patriot missile launcher because they're about 20 miles away from the White House. And since 9/11, they guard Washington very closely. I did not say that. Of course, it isn't there. But it's a serious naval surface warfare centre in Carderock in Massachusetts. And the judges involved in this are US Navy admirals, and even NASA astronauts. They have a bit of history there. One of their early judges was a NASA astronaut, and the pilot of the Florida Atlantic University team was a young lady who was just deciding what she wanted to do for a PhD, and she was so taken by this judge and so inspired by her that she ended up joining the US Navy, joining the NASA astronaut corps, and during lockdown we had a presentation from an astronaut on the ISS who was up there, in Space Shuttle, doing the rectification work on the Hubble Space Telescope, and she had been the Florida University pilot back in the late 70s, I think. Then we have the EISR, sponsored by the Institute of Marine Engineering, Science and Technology. It's a professional engineering institution, but other people involved are Babcock, various MOD, defence contractors, very notably though Kinetic, because Kinetic are a defence contractor who are now responsible for an awful lot of what used to be Royal Navy facilities down in Portsmouth and Gosport. Very notably, the Ocean Basin at Haslar. Used to be the Royal Navy's testing tank, and it's now run by Kinetic. I'll show you more about that in a moment. Both of these events, international competition, countries, New Zealand, Canada, USA, Netherlands, Germany, Mexico, we've recently had Taiwan, Singapore, and of course the UK take part in this. So people do travel to take part. The ISR, the American one. Hopefully these pictures are reasonably clear. Takes place at the David Taylor Model Basin. This is basically, this photograph on the right probably shows a little more. It's in a very dark tunnel. It's quite an oppressive place to spend the week. It's about 15 metres wide, 6 metres deep. It's flooded with river water from the Potomac River, which flows just outside, and it's 1/4 mile long. You can see it on Google Maps clear as anything, because they test everything they tow hulls, ships' hulls, to work out their hydrodynamics and things like that. That's what the function is. They also shoot torpedoes and stuff, but it's basically to work out naval hydrodynamic things in a controlled environment. But you can think of it as a 1/4 mile long canal. And we raced down the first 100 metres of this. And I have a schematic to demonstrate it. So you can see it's about 100 metres long with a speed trap part way down, 10 metre speed trap where they've got cameras to time how fast you're going through it. And I spent ages doing this. That's what you do, okay? Now that is basically the American version. It's a drag race. You start at one end and you pedal furiously and get as far as you can, as quickly as you can. Oh, I promised people I would emphasise. The submarine is flooded. It's not a pressure vessel. It's not a submarine in the traditional sense. So the pilot is wearing sub-aqua gear. He's a scuba diver in a flooded vessel, okay? So they're pedalling like fury and trying to go as fast as possible. But the important thing is the American version is a drag race. In alternate years, we come to Gosport. Now we notice from this, it's bigger, it's light and airy, it's pleasant in comparison. The American one it's dark and murky. You'll see, I've got a video in a moment, how murky it is. This is very cold, but it's 6 metres deep. It's the size of a very large football pitch, It's huge. It's probably the largest freshwater tank anywhere in the world. The Americans like to think their equivalent is bigger, but they cheat in the way they measure it. But this is very big. This is the Ocean Basin at Haslar. It's what's called a manoeuvring tank. We have a towing tank, like the American one, across the road. It's a Victorian building because we invented the science, actually. Froude, if you're an engineer, was an engineer who worked out of this base. But yeah, so it's a very big tank. And what this enables us to do is something slightly different. And you can imagine how long it took me to do this one. So we start at the top right. We go through the speed trap. We go round the end by the wave machine. And then, oh yes, it's a slalom on the way home. So whereas the American version is a drag race, it's out and out straight line speed, this one is about steering. This one is manoeuvrability. And this is what makes it fun, because they expect you to turn up with a different hull each year. You can get away with bringing the same hull to the 2 different competitions, but basically we have to design a new submarine each time, and for different purposes. Now the people who are good at this, notably the French-Canadian Naval Academy, the École Supérieure Technologie in Montreal, who are the world record holders in straight line speed, you would struggle to keep up with their submarine if you were running alongside. It's quick. We're not quite that quick, but I'll show you how we do later on. Recent UK competitors. I said that it came to the UK because a Canadian professor, my friend William McGill, came to the UK from Canada, and he got a professorial chair at Bath University, as marked on the map there. So Bath University were the first UK competitors, probably about 15 years ago. Since then, Newcastle have taken part. Plymouth, they have taken part in the past. We haven't seen them for years. Southampton University are pretty regular, but badly underfunded, strangely. A few years ago, I was the external examiner at UCL in London, which is one of our best marine engineering degree courses, and I had a go at them for the fact that they weren't doing this. And I said, you're doing Formula Student and all these other competitions. Why on earth are you not doing the ISR? And so they are currently entering their first boat for the competition in Gosport for the next round. And then you've got Warwick University. Now, what do we all notice about Warwick? We are literally about as far as you can get from the sea. My wife and I, we both used to work at Warwick University. We live a few miles away, not very far, at a place called Meriden that likes to think it's the centre of England. It isn't, but it's close. We're about as far as you can get from the coastline in England, anyway. That isn't as much of a disadvantage as you might think, because as I said, these submarines are flooded vessels. They've got a pilot in them who is a sub-aqua diver with all the diving tanks and everything. Unfortunately for us, just up the road near Leicester is Stony Cove. Now, I imagine in this environment, some of you at least might have diving experience. Oh, right, okay. I'd be surprised if you haven't heard of Stony Cove, because Stony Cove is one of the UK's centres for diver training. A lot of, for instance, North Sea welders are trained at Stony Cove for welding, at the 35-metre depths and so on. So Warwick University's in a strange situation. We don't have marine engineering degrees, and we're nowhere near the sea, but we got interested in this, and so we started doing it. First entry into the competition in 2013-14. I ran it a year before, but just as a paper exercise. Design this, tell us how it's going to work and so on. That's because that year it was taking place in the US and we simply couldn't afford to go. But the following year it was at Gosport, and that's a cheap trip. So we took what we called at the time HPS, Human Powered Submarine, HPS Shakespeare. The thing that it might help to know is Warwick University does have a very strong reputation in automotive engineering. In fact, Jaguar Land Rover do an awful lot of their research and development work on our campus. We've got very strong ties with JLR. The judges thought that our submarine showed a little bit too much involvement from Land Rover, because they looked at that and said, are you kidding? That, it is worth noting, was the first submarine in the competition to complete the circuit of the basin. While everybody else was getting theirs to work, and there's a lot of safety scrutineering that has to be satisfied before they let you race. It has to be dry checked and wet checked. While they were all still doing that, we were in the basin and pootling around. This still holds the record for the slowest completed circuit of the ocean basin. And we held that record. It was our best time for an embarrassingly long time. 2 years ago, we broke our we joke about the fact we broke our own record by 3 hours. It wasn't quite. We broke our own record by about 10 minutes because this thing just sort of like pootled around. I'll come to the awards because it won prizes. It was the only one that completed a full circuit on day 3 of racing. So it still came home with a prize. But we got better. This was our second effort. By now we were starting to call it Godiva because Warwick University is actually closer to Coventry than Warwick. And Godiva's a thing with us. And Go Diver. We thought that was very clever. And then we did this one. And then we did this one. And yeah, there you go. That was last year's one. That was the one that we took down to Gosport last year, and with the team that did it. I think this is now Godiva 7 or something. Now I've left, I used to persuade them, no, stick with the brand name. Everybody in America knows the Warwick team are Godiva, but they keep on changing the name, which I think is a bad idea. But it's their sub. It's theirs to do what they want. Right, I've got a video for you now. Now, let me give a bit of background because this looks a bit murky. This is, I think, our best time in the American straight line race. This is at Carderock, ISR 15, so this is 2019. The young lady Sarah, who is the pilot in this, I think, is still the UK record holder for international submarine racing. Let me see if this will spark up neatly. Oh, come on. In anticipation of this, here's one I prepared earlier. Right, it's that one.
This is Apollo Control at 102 hours into the flight of Apollo 11. It's grown quite quiet here in Mission Control.
It's murky because that is the Potomac River.
A few moments ago, Flight Director Gene Kranz requested that everyone sit down, get prepared for events that are coming. And he closed with the remark, good luck to all of you. Minutes now until ignition for powered descent. Everything's still looking very good at this point. Okay, all flight controllers gonna go for powered descent. Retro, go. Fido, go. Guidance, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. GNC, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go. Capcom, we're go for powered descent. We're off to a good start. Play it cool.
That's the start line being crossed. So you get a bit of a run up.
Okay, all flight controllers, I'm going around the horn. Okay, retro, go. Fido, go. Guidance, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. GNC, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go. Retro, go. Fido, go. Guidance, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. GNC, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go. Capcom, we're go for landing. Okay, everybody, let's hang tight and look for landing radar. 75 feet, down a half. 1202 alarm. 60 seconds. We're going that flight. We're going that alarm. 40 feet down, 2.5. If it does reoccur, will we go? 30 seconds. 1201. 1201. Roger, 1201 alarm. 1201 alarm. That time, we'll go, flight. Okay, we're go. We've had shutdown. Listen,
And by the way, that's what you get if you ask a modern student to do you a little video. Our students these days are better at media than they are at engineering sometimes. Anyway, that's a race down the Carter Rock racecourse, and I think that is still the UK's fastest time. It's nothing like as fast as the Omer team are able to achieve, but we're good at some other things. Because what's the result of all this? Apart from the fact that we have probably more fun than is really decent, at the end of the day, you'll be pleased to know at UK universities there is usually a greater focus on something more important than just the staff and students having a laugh. So in 2014, we turned up with that thing, Shakespeare, that looked like a greenhouse with a propeller bolted onto it. But that won the most dramatic performance award, which was a little Oscar, but it also won the winner of Day 3 racing. Now that's helpful because you take that back home with you, and now sponsors take you seriously. So that was good for us raising money. The most dramatic performance, I have to point out, I said it still holds the record for the slowest completed run. That's because, if you remember, at Gosport, they do that slalom. And our pilot that year, Ben, bumped into one of the slalom poles. And William had said, please don't mess my course up, it takes us ages to put it right. So he bumped the pole, and it moved. So he put an elastic band over the dead man's handle, opened the hatch, got out, put the post back where it was, got back in, took the elastic band off the dead man's handle, and finished the course. That's why it took him 10 minutes to get round, because he repaired the course as he went. And for that, we got a little Oscar for most dramatic performance. But you look down the list there, most years we've taken part in this, we come back with something. Including some that are really, really useful when you get back to your university department. Warwick Manufacturing Group, that I spent my time with, we have in our tagline, innovation, something, this is what we're, and our specialist areas of research, mind, are things like composite development, sustainability, recyclable composites, and so on. So some of these awards, including a $1,000 prize for the innovation thing, that's because we created that first British racing green submarine. It was flat pack, and we took it to the States in a box that was about 1 metre cube. So our transportation and logistics costs were about 1/10 of everybody else's, because everybody else's submarine turns up in a shipping container. They liked that, because the maritime industry is all about logistics and supply chains. So if you can reduce your logistical costs, oh, how clever. We turned up with this small box and they said, where's your submarine? And we said, oh, give us half an hour. You know, we'll put it all together. It was like an IKEA kit. That and some other things. I think it was also a biodegradable composite. So they gave us $1,000. You go back home with a $1,000 check, and obviously we don't keep it. We have to give it to the department because they funded it all. But they like that. Innovation prize from a US competition, all right, yes, you can go next time as well. And you go down there, we tend to win the best design report quite frequently because the students have done it as part of their studies, so they've already done a presentation for their degree course. Best use of composites, again, it's our specialist area. So all of these things go down very well. Last year at Gosport, we came back with these, some very nice bits of, actually, I think they're Welsh glass, you like that, some Welsh glassware for the Innovation Prize. There's 2 of them because we get to keep one and we've got to give one back because apparently they were quite valuable. So most years we've won a prize. You'll notice none of them, or very few of them, are for racing speed. But if I point out that we're up against Delft University that turn up with a 30-strong team and a Pantechnicon that's got a workshop in it, including 3D printing facilities, and the French Naval Academy, French Canadian Naval Academy turn up, they're good, but they are semi-professional. I've got a team of 6 or 7 students that change every year. And so we punch above our weight, but more importantly, since 2012, we've taken part in every competition. And the reason we are able to claim that we're UK champions is because sometimes we're the only team that make it there from the UK. But I would emphasise that may sound like a cheat, but you try doing this and shipping it to the States in time for the competition, that's why a lot of teams don't make it there. So it's an accolade to my students that they managed to get there. Outreach success. Outreach is hugely important for universities because, you know, we're all under cost pressures and so on. And so universities in recent times are under a lot of pressure to show what the value they add, especially now students are paying fees and have been for years. So if you take your work and take it to the general public and to special events and so on, it scores brownie points. This one over on the left, you'll remember, ironically, a few years ago, Coventry was the UK City of Culture. And so Coventry Transport Museum, because that's what Coventry is really known for, transport, they borrowed our submarine for 6 months and had it on display. So that's what it's doing there. That was the Prime Minister at the time and the Chancellor of the Exchequer. They were visiting our department, and the guy just out of sight behind here is my old boss, Professor Lord Bhattacharya, died a few years ago, but he's pally with these people. They come round. The great thing about that was Theresa May was at the time debating what the replacement for the Trident submarines was going to be, and so we offered her our expertise. And oh, how she laughed. This is, that was the Resonate Festival, which again was another thing. So, but it's all about bringing the work that we do to the public and making them aware of, oh, this is why. From my point as an educator, I mean, let's not forget, I'm a university lecturer and I've got to try and find something that is of genuine worth. In terms of the educational successes of this sort of stuff, we talk about consistently elevated levels of student engagement. The students love this. It's the real world engineering that they thought they were signing up to, not sitting in a lecture theatre receiving lectures on mathematics and fluid mechanics and so on. They wanted to make things. It's why I got into engineering. They want to make things, and they love this. But in more practical terms, it's real deadlines. It's real budgets. If you don't have your submarine ready in time for the shipment date, you don't get there. You don't take part. There was 1 year, and embarrassingly, it was Gosport, and we got picked to the last. But they're limited in the number of places they can have. There's only 12 bays of the ocean basin. And Gdansk beat us to the 12th place by quarter of an hour. We uploaded a video that was the final registration process at 2:10 in the morning, and at 1:55, I think it was, Gdansk had uploaded theirs. And so William said, sorry, they've beaten you. We still went down, our divers helped out, we helped run the competition, but we weren't in the competition. And it was crushing for them. They'd spent all year doing it. And I said, well, there you go, there's a lesson to learn. You didn't meet the deadline. And in the real world, you don't have an appeal. And students are very, very used to ability to appeal. Oh, the goldfish ate my homework. Yeah, no, we don't care. Yeah? Enhanced employment opportunities. This goes down brilliantly with employers. Usually in job interviews, they know what's involved in an engineering degree. Everybody is doing effectively, it's called AHEP 4 or AHEP 5 now. It's the criteria that a registered degree has to meet in engineering in order to satisfy the chartered requirements. So they know all that. What they ask our students about is, okay, what project work did you do? What was that? What did that involve? How did it go? And so on. And this delivers that in spades. Significantly improve key skills, so the things that are actually important for graduate engineers feature in this. Some of you that have done this sort of work may be familiar with this model. I've actually remembered to put a reference down here. So it's been around for years. I think this is based on something that was published in the 70s. But the idea of leadership and teamwork skills, they will often talk about the various phases, being forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And I know this all sounds a little bit pedagogical, but sorry, bear with me. The idea, and I've been able to use some of this stuff and present this in pedagogical conferences, because the idea is that most of our project work that we get our students to do gets stuck in that first bit. Conventional student group projects often remain in the forming and storming bit. Now the interesting bit is, if you're an employer looking for a good graduate engineer, what you're actually interested in is these last three. Because the norming, performing and adjourning bit is what they want their graduate engineers to get involved in, hopefully as quickly as possible. Well, competition-based projects tend to be much, much better at delivering this stuff, because the norming, the performing, the adjourning bit, if you're talking about teamwork skills, and don't forget this is a team of disparate disciplines of engineers all working together, well, agreement, consensus, all of these bits I've ringed in red, they feature in our submarine competition, and indeed Formula Student and these other competitive ones. The leadership skills, again, they feature as part of this. So essentially, this project style is delivering something that is better for graduate engineers when they're applying for jobs and for the employer's point of view. But from my point of view personally, this is kind of important. This is Verena. She was our team leader a few years back. And I asked her one year, I was doing a conference presentation. I said, look, you know, if you don't mind, do you mind giving me a quote as the person, you know, one of the people who was actually on the team this year? And you can read it for yourself, but it's the bit in red at the bottom there that you know, I've kept this one because it says it all. Despite being the most difficult venture I've undertaken at university, it's certainly amongst the most enjoyable, rewarding, and memorable experiences I have ever had. They love it, and it's good. It's good for them. Yeah, as of last weekend, I only included this slide at the last minute. The happy couple, that's Richard, that's Verity. Richard was the team leader in 2014. Verity was the pilot. That's Shane, and that's Stuart. He was the electronics guy who designed a autopilot for that year's submarine. And I remember my colleagues on the academic judging panel saying, no, you haven't really, have you? It's not really an autopilot. He said, no, I think it is. And they said, well, how does it know the difference between up and down and, you know, sort of like gravity and things? Well, I used the gyroscope out of an iPhone and put it through a Kalman filter, and you could see their faces drop. And they said, oh my God, he's built an autopilot for a submarine. Supremely geeky, but the nicest guy you wish to meet. After his presentation, there was a guy from Celex who was trying to offer him a job, and I actually had to say, Stuart, he's trying to offer you a job. But this is our first submarine team wedding, and I have high hopes for our first submarine baby in due course. Finally then, oh look at that, I haven't even overrun too much. The final bit then, is it really going to help save the world? I'll finish off with a video. It's only about 2.5 minutes long. But in answer to this thing, is it really going to help save the world? I will point this out to you. As I say, I was an aerospace trained engineer. My background is very much material science and so on. It's only through this activity that I've really become involved in the maritime sector and marine engineering and so on. But I am now quite heavily involved in it. Last summer at Gosport, there was a new bunch of people around who were promoting the Submarine Race series. And this video is an introduction to what they've been doing. I will point out to you, 70% of this planet is ocean and sea. And in terms of sustainability and recyclability, think about international trade and those huge container ships. There's more of them than you imagine. Global trade is enormous. And those ships are filthy. Their engines are filthy. I don't know, I didn't bother looking it up because I'm sure it's contentious, but the amount of global pollution that is emanating from the maritime sector, and don't blame them particularly because it's basically international trade, is significant. And the problem with it is as soon as they're over the horizon, they're out of sight, out of mind. And so one of the key things that a lot of this is trying to do is raise people's awareness of our oceans. So, bear with me again, here's a video to finish up. Let's go there. And there. And this one. This was September this year. If you can't see, that's in the Canary Islands.
We're at the limit of what human beings can do. Right? We're pushing speeds that are at the very edge of what a scuba diver can do.
I like to see this as a combination of athlete and explorer, because what you're actually doing is exploring the very boundaries of human endurance and capacity.
I mean, sub racing is absolutely crazy. It's outrageous, but through the sport, we're inspiring people to understand the ocean environment. And when you understand how the ocean environment impacts you as an individual, only then are you truly motivated to start protecting it. So we want the sub racing series to change the relationship between humanity and our oceans. Imagine Formula One, but with more exploration and more discovery. If you combine that with the Tour de France and the America's Cup and then take it underwater, you've got completely unpredictable conditions, and you've also got a 3D space.
We want to use the excitement of sport, we want to use the excitement of a race and of everything, that the curiosity of all of that as a hook for really bringing conservation elements, really bringing all of the science about the ocean to people who wouldn't otherwise listen to it.
The goal of SRS, and more importantly the mission of SRS, is actually to generate this global submarine racing series across 10 to 12 global sites on an annual basis, and using that as a platform to engage people into the racing, the oceans, and most importantly what they can imagine happening in those oceans. Human-powered racing is one element of the sport, and it's about pushing us down that innovation pathway. We believe that's going to include a hybrid type of class, and then all the way pushing out the boundaries to full mad, incredible, technologically superior, electric-powered racing machines.
I want to push the limits of biomechanics to the very edge. I want to push the limits of the technology. I want to get efficient. I want to understand the hydrodynamics. All those various things all have to come together.
In order for us to be able to optimize the racing environment, we need to be out there collecting data and using that data in a really powerful way.
What we're going to be able to contribute here is a better measurement-based understanding of what's going on in a local environment based on what's going on in the open environment. And that information doesn't exist. So one of the things that we've set ourselves as a goal is to understand these bays we want to work in, and then try to understand coastal and open ocean links that we've got. That information is also super important for the marine biologist.
How does this work with the sub racing series? You start with building racing submarines, then there's a requirement to build subsea arenas. Those arenas then become the epicenter of research and development, and that ocean data in the nearshore environment informs global ocean modeling that will allow us to forecast changes in the future and allow us to harness the power of the oceans. It's going to be crazy fun. It's going to be an adventure. It's going to be a world of discovery, a subsea world of discovery, and it's the drama, fun, jeopardy, craziness, adventure of doing that. But in doing that, we'll drive the technology, we'll drive the innovation, solve problems that will impact humanity for the next millennium.
So, yeah, as I say, that is right up to date, because that thing in the Canary Islands, unfortunately we weren't able to be there, so you've only got about 5 of the teams, but I recognised all 5 of them, Albacore and so on. I don't know if you noticed, but there was the Omer machine that had a single-bladed prop. The US Navy were astonished at that, because that is or that isn't actually the one, but that technology is currently the world record holding submarine. One blade, because you haven't got all the blades interfering with each other's wash, turns out it's hugely efficient. The US Navy Research Department weren't aware of that. You saw the one with the kayak drive doing that? So there's a special award in these competitions for non-propeller driven, because it's got a lot to do with the fact the US Navy are very worried about how noisy their nuclear attack submarines are, so they're looking for quieter methods. The kayak drive isn't quiet, but it's not a propeller. So, there's things there. Anyway, look, I've done that. Thank you for listening. Thank you ever so much for listening. I think I'm only a little bit over time, but I'll be happy to take any questions. Thanks very much.
Well, you certainly heard it first as Think Ross Niagara. Thank you, Ian. I mean, I feel informed about something I'd never even heard of before a few days ago. So I wonder, do we have some questions and comments from our audience here to kickstart? Here we are at the front here.
John, I hear. Hello.
Hello. That was really quite interesting.
Just a minute.
Oh,
coming on to the different drives.
Yes.
I take it they're all pedal.
To be fair, the regulations of both the European and the international one, they simply say that everything has to be powered by the pilot. So you can't have any energy storage device involved in the propulsion. You can have batteries to power head-up displays and things like that for the pilot's navigation, for instance, but anything to do with the propulsion has got to be generated by the pilot in real time. And that's the only regulation. So no, it doesn't have to be pedals. Some people have played around with push pistons and so on. So there is an element of pedals are the most straightforward way of meeting that requirement. But actually, no. You can choose whatever means of propulsion you like as long as the pilot provides it.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that.
That's it.
Thanks, John. I have a question.
Yes.
Is it just one person?
Are you allowed to ask questions?
I'm allowed to ask questions. All right. Is it just one person is actually propelling the craft?
I'm not too sure if that. No, it isn't always. There is in America a separate category for two people.
Like a tandem.
Yeah. No, actually, I can think of two teams that have done it. I was going to say, can you guess who does it? But you don't know who the teams are. It's Texas A&M. Usually turn up with a side-by-side twin pilot one, and it's a behemoth. It's huge and big and orange, and as Texans, they have their, before they go in the water, they have a dance, yeah? And the Texans are at it again. But they have a two-pilot one. The advantage of this is most of the people have a single pilot and a propeller-driven. But there are these other categories for non-propeller driven, and not many teams are advanced enough to have developed that, and two pilot. And you tend to be competing in a class of one, and so you walk away with the trophy. But the Omer team got so fed up with being so good at single pilot propeller driven that they tend to these days turn up with something very adventurous. Would any of you know what a Voigt Schneider drive is? If any of you have been involved in
Sure, there's one in the garage.
well, you do, right? They're often found on tugboats because tugboats need ultimate manoeuvrability, and so it's a very strange arrangement. It looks like a horizontal paddle wheel, but it's much cleverer than that because the blades of the propeller are altering as it rotates, and so it effectively gives you 360-degree manoeuvrability in the water. And the Omer team said, that looks like fun, and so they put it sideways on and mounted it like paddle wheels so that their submarine could literally sit in the column of water and do this. It could go any way you wanted, which was great, but it was a bit like the Harrier jump jet. That's fascinating. It can fly backwards. and it's only the Americans that really find that clever. The Royal Air Force would much rather have a plane that went forwards quickly. And so this whole thing was, and it was hopeless, it was slow. But they also had two pilots end on end, and they took it to Gosport, and it couldn't get round the end. And so for the first time ever, we beat Omer. Because they didn't finish all week, because they got to the end by the wave machine and they couldn't turn the corner.
We've got a question here.
It's just a quick one, actually. We saw the happy couple getting married. Do you think if they are lucky enough to have a baby, they'll go for a water birth?
Tish. Yes. do you know, I'll recommend it to them.
Sure.
No, I won't. No, you can't do that here. No.
Hello. I notice all the pilots are underwater at the time wearing sub-aqua.
Yes.
Why don't you have the submarine as an air enclosed submarine, weights to keep it underwater, and there'd be less resistance to, when you're underwater, you've got resistance to moving your muscles, haven't you, because of the water?
Oh, yeah.
If you had them surrounded by air, there'd be less resistance to the movements of their muscles.
Never mind that. We're trying to shift a submarine full of water. It's very heavy. So it's a lovely idea, but there's some very good reasons why not. Safety. If it's full of air, it would be enormously buoyant.
But you could put weights in them.
Oh, we put weights in them anyway. But also, you would be relying on it remaining watertight. And frankly, in this environment, we crash into the side of the tank and split the thing like an eggshell sometimes. And paramount is diver safety. In the US, it's a bunch of US Marine divers. Interestingly, in the UK, and I didn't realise this, we go to Gosport and it's Army divers. Because in this country, the Army are responsible for guarding naval bases, not the Navy, because the naval base is on the land. So all of our safety divers at Gosport are Army, and in America, they're Navy. Small point. But no, to give a good reason, our team for the first 2 or 3 years was really not very good at the racing. It took us a while to be able to complete a course. And the reason was we didn't sort out the neutral buoyancy bit. So buoyancy is the absolute fundamental point about competing in this. If you imagine a 6-metre column of water, you're only fit for racing if your submarine sits in the column of water like it's hanging from a thread, and when you load the pilot, it should gently go up and down, and up and down as the pilot breathes in and out. And until you've got that level of trim and that level of neutral buoyancy, as soon as you start pedalling, you're going to surface or hit the deck, or you're not in control. But as soon as, and we worked out a very clever way of making and the trick we found was you make the submarine slightly buoyant, weight it to get the neutral buoyancy, and I don't know if you're familiar with Rexroth, it's aluminium. We've got a load of kilogram weights and half-kilogram weights that we can twist to lock in a channel, and so you get the neutral buoyancy sorted out with the number of these weights, and if it's slightly up or slightly down, then a diver comes in and just moves one of these weights forward 6 inches or back 6 inches to get the trim. And when you've got it so that your pilot loaded, you can sit, and it looks really eerie when you get it right, because it's sitting in a column of water like it's hanging from a thread. Then it works. And if you can't achieve that, you're wasting your time. It took us years to get that sorted out. So your idea, it would be so massively complicated, but also quite dangerous if we ran pressure vessels.
Can you see? Oh,
Charlie.
after Charlie, there's Anne here as well. Here. Okay, Charlie, flick
Hello.
away.
Do you think it's got a future smuggling drugs across the Atlantic?
We had in America a team from Mexico who, it was about 5 years ago, sadly didn't turn up until the final day of the competition, and when they did turn up, it was the team and no submarine, because they'd had problems at customs with the DEA, because they saw a submarine coming from Mexico. So I guess that the US Drugs Enforcement Agency would probably take your point very seriously.
Anne?
Going back to the buoyancy, negative neutral buoyancy, is that impacted by steering? And how are they? Is it a rudder type steering? And
It's whatever you want it to be.
right.
There are remarkably few rules. It's got to be safe. It's got to have a dead man's handle for a safety buoy that lets the surface divers know if you're in distress. And it's got to meet a couple of other, it can't be too large, otherwise it won't get on the lift to drop it into the basin and so on. But other than that, it's remarkably open for your design interpretation. It doesn't have to be rudders. That Voigt-Schneider drive that I was talking about, the drive is actually the manoeuvring capability as used by tugboats. One year, I think it was a team from Wellington in New Zealand turned up, and it was beautiful. They'd actually articulated a dolphin tail, and they pedalled it, and this whole articulated aft end, did that. It was beautiful. Hopeless, but beautiful. It barely moved. And also, have you seen that? I can't remember what the fish are called, but there's a fish that ripples down its spine. It's got a very long dorsal fin, and it basically ripples like that all the way down. Mark will know what they're called. Yeah, right. They turned up. Yes, thank you. They turned up from New Zealand with this thing, and it was enormous and hugely heavy. And it had loads of. It looked like a knitting machine. It had loads of knitting needles, and as the week went on, they put it all together, and they were threading this sail through all these knitting needles, and on something like the day before the end of the competition, they got it to work. They put it in the water, and everything fell off. And again, but the ingenuity that goes into this is fascinating. And to answer the initial question, yes, it can affect the buoyancy, and this is the sort of thing that you have to try and deal with.
Conger eel.
Conger eel? No.
Yeah.
No, it's not a conger eel.
Andy?
Yeah, thank you very much. That was really interesting, quite fascinating listening to you.
It's bonkers, isn't it?
Tell me, what sort of speed are the fastest in this race achieving?
Our best speed, if I remember, is 2.83 knots. And I think we can actually claim, as I say, without too much stretch of the imagination, then that's the best a UK team's ever achieved. I think I'm right in saying Omer's best speed with that single-bladed prop at Carderock was something like 8.3 knots. And yeah, it ended up as a race-off between Delft University and the French-Canadian lot, the Omer team, and it's the only time I've seen two boats race against each other, and everybody was watching it on the final day, and we were literally running down, I don't know what you call it, the towpath, and you could barely keep up with them. They were quick, very quick.
Mark?
Ian, I'm so proud of your fantastic talk. Well done. Fantastic.
But you're biased.
Yeah, I know, I am biased. But when I was watching that video, I saw the exhaust bubbles from the scuba diver who's piloting the...
Oh, yes.
Can't you use those bubbles to reduce the friction?
Right. As I say, I'm not a hydrodynamicist or anything like that.
Your nephew is.
Oh, right.
Jamie Tuersley.
Is he? I'll talk to him about it. You would be allowed to do something with that. Everybody gets very fussed about boundary layers and where the boundary layer separates and where it becomes turbulent and so on. And when I retired and handed the project over, It's interesting. A fellow from the engineering department, Petr Dedesenko, who's Russian, and he still managed to get into the US for the US competition. But Petr is a very, very competent fluid dynamicist. And his view is that an awful lot of that is just not worth bothering about, simply because they're going so slowly. It becomes all of this stuff with cavitation of your propellers and all of this stuff matters if you've got an outboard motor or you are a nuclear submarine with a thing that's sort of like 15-foot diameter. But when you're a little diver in a fairing and you're pedaling your heart out, things like a bread knife sized and shaped propeller blade and a single one going round at the speed you can get it to go pedaling actually turns out to be the best way of going. So there's loads of hydrodynamic things that you think of, and bless them, our students do this every year. They've had biomimetic fins, emulating the ridges on whale fins and all of this stuff. And it's great for their project, but it's not so great for actually getting around the
What I want to say to you, Ian, is paramecium.
Oh, thank you very much for that, yes.
Single-celled animal
this is
with a flagellum.
Lovely. This is how our conversations go.
So, can I... Somebody had a thing there. Oh, it's Lorna.
Oh, it's Lorna. Hello, Lorna. Hello, Lorna, who I've never met before.
Yes. Thank you, Ian. Now I know what you've been doing for the last, 20, 30 years.
Well, that's what I'm telling you. Yeah.
As you know, I'm the only one in the family, I think, who hates the idea of scuba diving. That's a big part.
Yeah,
Sharon. What are you doing in terms of measuring the impact on the diver and the sort of air flow? Presumably, if they're pedaling away underneath, they're going to be potentially hyperventilating.
There's an awful lot. One of the reasons we have had a lot of success is that very early in this, a new colleague joined us in our teaching team at Warwick, who happened to work very closely with me on one of my key modules, a fellow called Nigel Denton, who just happens to be a UK nationally qualified dive instructor. And so I got Nigel involved, and he's been my wingman all the way through this. And he's a huge advantage because it's safety first all the way through. And Nigel is exactly the right person to say, we bring the diver down from the surface on what's called a pony cylinder with assistance, because he hasn't got any fins on, because he's got cycle shoes on with clips on them and so. So he's escorted to the submarine, which is sitting on the bottom, 6 meters down, and then he has to swap regulators with the one that's in the submarine. So there's loads of checking, how much pressure have we got in this cylinder, how much pressure have we got in that cylinder, and what about all the people who are supporting it. You saw the race, there were 6 of us down there. I was the guy at the back, but there's all of us loading it in and clipping him in and so on. It was Nigel who was at the front, who was listening to the audio on the hydrophones, which you might have heard over the soundtrack, Godiva, 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 go, go, go. And Nigel falls back and is signalling to the pilot, start pedaling. Yeah, and that, because it's all underwater and so you're doing it by signals. All of that stuff about how much air have you got in your cylinder and all of that is very carefully monitored. But you've got teams of Army or Navy divers keeping an eye on everything. So everything is remarkably safe. We've never had anybody have a serious diving thing at all.
Is that encouraging you, Lorna?
No.
To be honest, the one in America, as I say, they keep on telling us that 6 months before we arrive, they clean the tank out with vacuum cleaners and so on. But it's filled with the Potomac River, and it looks like you're diving in the Potomac River. At least at Gosport, it's clean water. It's very clean. It's very cold, but it's very clean. There was one year, I think what am I now? Probably would have been about my 54th birthday or something. And I spent almost the entirety, something like 8 hours of my 54th birthday, 6 meters down at Carter Rock, because we tended to be out there, the week of my birthday. We had a load of beers that night, but yeah, it was a strange way of spending your birthday. Yeah.
Andy was has
Mark.
another question. And
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah. Andy, flake away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have any of your developments or your competitors' developments been taken on by wider industry?
Do you know, strangely, it's the sort of thing where I wouldn't mind telling you, but the people who do it couldn't possibly say. I was telling the story earlier on down at Gosport. If any of you have been to the Portsmouth Naval Dockyard, there's loads of museums, including a submarine museum, and outside the front of it is an enormous great brass propeller. And they said to me one year, there's an Astute class submarine down there as well. There's this enormous great propeller, and they informed me one year. They said, "Oh yeah, that's the spare propeller for HMS Trafalgar, which I think was decommissioned in something like 2009, 2010, something like that. That was the last Royal Navy submarine to have a propeller." I said, "Oh, that's fascinating. So what do they use now?" And he said, "I couldn't possibly tell you." Because a lot of it, but at the American Navy, their facility, they take it very seriously. As I say, they've recruited people who've ended up as space shuttle astronauts from this process. It's what they call a capstone event. They regard it as a very good demonstration of capability for recruitment for the US Navy and other armed forces. And they do recruit people to PhDs on the basis of the work they've done. And some of these teams are doing, like I say, we've won prizes for turning up with a submarine that had a biodegradable hull. Another year we won a prize for turning up with a hull that was made out of recycled carbon fibre. You're all familiar with how good carbon fibre is. Well, it's great right up to the point you've finished with it, because it's really, really difficult to do anything with it afterwards. And so now it's all about recyclability and sustainability. How do you deal with something that's already been made into a carbon fibre thing? Well, we found a way of reusing it, and we built a submarine out of it.
So have any of your students been taken on by Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS, and with a view to bringing home the America's Cup?
That'd be lovely. We had a thing. I was Andy Dinsfield from Kinetic. He's the guy who runs the ocean basin. No, the entire site. And I was chatting to him one year, and I said, "Okay, look, thanks ever so much for everything you do to support this. What's in it for you?" I tried to make this a focus of everything for 12 years. There had to be something in it for everybody. I got something out of it, the students got something out of it, the workshop technicians. I tried to make sure that there was something in it for everybody. And I said to Andy, "What's in it for you?" And he said, "Let me put it like this. Are you any of you familiar with the AUKUS deal? This hit the headlines about 18 months, 2 years ago, where the French were going to sell the Australians a load of diesel-powered submarines. And we really annoyed them, because the Americans and the UK decided that we were okay with the Australians becoming a nuclear-capable submarine fleet. Now, you think about it. Australia is about to have nuclear submarines. They are going to need a load of nuclear submarine engineers. They're not going to go to Russia or China. They can't go to France, because it was a diplomatic incident that we poached the business off them. There's only two other countries that are nuclear capable, and that's America, and who wouldn't want to work in America at the salaries they pay, and the UK. So he said, "I predict I'm going to need 30,000 submarine engineers in the next 10 years, because we're short of them now, and we know they're all going to be poached by the Australians." If you've got, relatives who are looking for careers in engineering, my hot tip is get them to go into submarine engineering, because there is going to be a lot of demand for it. And the delightful thing is, I've had 4 of my students have ended up working either for Kinetic or Babcock as a direct result of them working on this project. One of them, Tejal, he had a job lined up, because they're all about to graduate, they're all 4th year engineers. He had a job lined up with Siemens, went to the competition, had such fun, he wrote to Siemens and said no thanks, and joined Kinetic's graduate scheme. And they loved that. He said, "If I get one person to sign up to our graduate program as a result of all of this," he said, "it makes it worth my while." And I said, "Well, you've had 4 of my students." So yes, it's important.
Anne, if you another
It's one at the back there. Oh,
there's Anne and
Even
back.
to me, I think this is a silly question. I apologise I was late
No
in.
such thing.
I have a hearing issue, so you may have said it, but within the team from Warwick, how many of the students, what the proportion of students, do they bring in the divers? Do they design the concept and draw in the others?
And it's so not a silly question.
Sorry?
That's so not a silly question. Every year I get allocated, or I got, I'm 2 years retired. Every year I got an allocation of 6 or 7 or 8 students. The criteria was they try and mix them up by their current degree results, so they weren't all first class students at the end of the 3rd year. I had a mix of, top students and ones who were struggling more and so on. They all tend to be good because they have to get into the 4th year. But different disciplines, different capabilities. All I was allowed to say was it would be a huge advantage if they're already dive qualified. And so my colleague Dave Bricknell would try and say, look, if you want to be on the submarine team, and actually we've got a reputation for being one of the best projects to get onto. If you want to be on the submarine team, let us know if you're dive qualified and we'll try and treat you preferentially as far as we can. So we would usually have 1 or 2 people who were dive qualified, if we were lucky. That's where Nigel, my wingman, was so essential, because on the first day of their 4th year studies, he said, right, which of you are prepared to learn how to dive? And we'd subsidise from our project funds them. Well, one of our key sponsors is Stony Cove, and so they didn't charge us for the pool time, and we would get. And invariably, there's usually one or other that really doesn't like the water, and so we'd train them up to be the shore person. But everybody else on the team would do a crash course to become a qualified diver, and you have to be a qualified diver to get in the pond. The interesting bit is because of insurance, I'm allowed, me and Nigel were both allowed to get in the water in America. At Gosport, because we were employed as university employees, the site's insurance didn't cover us, and so we weren't allowed in the water, despite the fact that Nigel is a nationally qualified dive instructor, not allowed in the water. The great thing was, 2 years ago, I said to William, well, I've just retired. He said, are you not employed in any way, shape or form by University of Warwick? I said, I don't receive any money for it. He said, get in the water. And I'm allowed in the water in Gosport now.
Thanks, Sam.
Yes. Can I ask why you haven't got any medical students there's several aspects of medicine are involved in engineering, heart valves, how they work, blood flow and neurology, the nervous system and so forth. Why didn't you have medical students in that group right at the beginning with the civil engineers and mechanical, electrical engineers and so
simply
forth?
because, and it isn't the case with all of the teams, one of the reasons we've been as successful as we have is because our team do it as part of their degree studies. So they are engineers on an engineering course. We do have a postgraduate medical school at Warwick. Not too sure if it would fit very well, but yes, they would be useful, certainly for all the reasons you've just said, but we run it as an academic module. It's their ES410 group project. So they're all doing it. And the reason that's helpful is because they've done the design report, they've done the presentation to an academic panel and so on. So loads of these other peripheral things, apart from racing, they've practiced it and they've done it as part of their degree studies, so they tend to be very good at it. The Southampton team, it's basically an extracurricular club. They struggle to raise the funds to do it because it's, we'll all meet up on Thursday evening sort of thing. They struggle to get people who can dive, and finally they turn up and they're still writing their presentation at the competition. A lot have turned up and it's all on a data stick, and it's been presented, it's had feedback, it's been improved. So that's why we tend to win things like the design report frequently, because we're very good at that side of it, simply because we do it as an academic module. People have said, why don't you open it up and make it much more widely applicable? And I've said, well, okay, we could do that, but what we might lose is the element we're good at. Unless Warwick University is prepared to put in a lot more support and funding to the level of Delft or the École Supérieure. But bear in mind, their teams are 30 strong. They've got PhD students on it. They've got people who've been working on the team for 3-4 years. So we do it in a different way. And we win prizes for what we do, and we just accept the fact that we're not going to be the fun. We're essentially top of the championship, and we don't expect to compete with the Liverpools and Man Cities of the game, because they're much better funded.
Man City.
Or any
Great.
very good
Are
team of your choice.
Okay.
I come from Watford, you know, I'm not choosy.
Well,
do you know, the problem with the question was, do people choose Warwick University because of this competition? They don't yet, because they don't become aware of it until they're here. I think there is some evidence that, or certainly at Open Days, we got students who were very aware of Formula Student, and people would ask, do you take part in Formula Student? Now, we ought to be really good at that, because, as I say, we've got a very close affiliation with Jaguar Land Rover. And we're hopeless at it. We've never been any good at Formula Student. We've very rarely won any prizes. The competition is much, much higher. So the German teams, Porsche and Audi, fund their local universities. So there's a lot of large automotive companies who use Formula Student as a vehicle, and some people are better at utilising that support than we seem to be. Actually, that's not true. We have won 1 or 2 prizes, but they tend to be for the electrical systems and stuff. But I was very, very much an advocate of saying we ought to make this more. Certainly, we turn up with our Submarine at Open Days, and it usually gets a crowd of people showing a bit of interest in it, and I do this sort of talk to interested parents. But I suppose, realistically, they make their choices based on bigger issues than how much fun they're having in the group project. Certainly we get a lot of our students who go into the 4th year choosing this particular project from the ones available, because they've heard that, well, notably every other year you get a trip to the US. But no, we have a reputation for being one of the better group projects, I think.
I just want to make sure before we finish that there aren't any questions from Mrs. Tuersley and nephew Andrew Tuersley, because I don't think I've ever been at any event that you've been at and there hasn't been a question or comment from you.
I'll try and think of something. Hold on. Oh yeah. Good luck.
Hello, young man who I've never seen before.
Oh yeah. No, so I was just wondering. We've talked about the top secret like military applications of this, and there is an interesting sort of question in that I guess your reading is that the reason the U.S. Navy are facilitating this is that they get an eye on a lot of interesting innovation in what's going on with propulsion and that kind of thing. But on a civilian level, if you're talking about this, helping save the world, can you sort of paint a picture about in our day-to-day lives what some of these sort of technologies might end up adding up to, maybe in terms of like how there's a lot of people who go out sailing and boating generally around here.
I'd refer you to that final video I showed. The fellow who starts talking in that video is William McGill. He's the guy who came from Canada to Bath and is now at Rheinval. He's effectively the race director of the European series. Now he's a professor of biomimetics at Rheinval. So he's only peripherally an engineer. He's more involved in biomimetics, that's his field. And his point is that this has influence upon a lot of things that are very important for all the things that you've just said. In actual fact, I don't think the US Navy see this as a source of, innovation and so on. What they do see it as a source of is the sort of people they'd like to recruit to become involved in the top secret, military hardware-y stuff, where they're looking for capable graduate students. Not, oh, that's clever, we'll put that on our US submarine. Right. It's not that level. But it's certainly an indicator of potential in the individuals involved. They love that in spades. What that final video, and I'd refer you to have a look at it at your leisure, because that's making this slightly intangible point that we need to be more aware of our oceans. And fine, if you're a diver, then you've got a level of interest and knowledge of what goes on in certainly our close shore seas and oceans and so on. But most people have no idea what 70% of this planet is about. Somebody was pointing out, I think we've got better maps of Mars than we have of the subsea or subsurface oceans. And that's 70% of our planet. And I think what they're trying to do with the SRS, the Submarine Racing Series, and it all sounds bonkers to me. I think it's a bit wacko-jacko sort of stuff. But I know Matt Silver-Valance well. He keeps on trying to get me involved, and I keep on saying I'm retired. But he's very, very keen to drum up the interest in this. And I think they're onto something. Because if he says it's like Formula One, but with this and this and this and this instead, then think of all of the developments that come out of Formula One for road safety. Disc brakes on your cars, that came out of automotive racing. All of the safety stuff, the safety cages, the crash resistance, so much of modern automotive safety and development, performance and so on comes out of automotive racing. And I think what they're trying to do is heighten the awareness in the marine sector. And the best way of doing that, two things lead to great innovation: war, unfortunately, and money. And if you can make something fun, then money tends to follow it. And if you can get money, then you can start doing some innovation. That's what I think they're trying to do with SRS. Yeah. And I think it's fascinating because that video, I only got it about a month ago, and I thought, oh, that'll help for my talk. As I say, they only did that in September, and I was just so impressed with what they managed to do.
So do you reckon, like, for example, one of these submarines would enable a diver to cover more area or more volume, rather, I guess, on the same amount of oxygen?
Probably not. It's very energetic trying to pedal that thing.
But I mean, possibly if there was some sort of powered.
I think a lot of what you've seen here is more fun than anything else. At Warwick, we have a lot of restricted space in our workshop. So every time we've finished with a hull, they're very quick to say, we're not storing it here. We'll send it down to the warehouse in Wellesbourne if you like, but we're not storing it in the warehouse. In the workshop. And so they keep on putting them in the skip. And my team, who've now graduated and gone on, saying, if you're ditching Godiva 4, can I have it? And one of them was seriously talking about trying to make a business out of making it a sport diving thing in Stony Cove or something.
Well,
I don't know. Maybe you can.
I'm reliably informed that dinner awaits those who are eating.
Go on.
One final question here, comment. Sorry.
Hello. Have you been approached by any film companies? Because it definitely has a James Bond type of vibe. So basically,
do you know any?
Has Q been in touch?
No, no. But I'm open to offers.
I will let them know.
Thank you. We'll talk over dinner.
I think we've managed to exhaust all of the questions. Can
Thank
I
you
ask
so
you
much.
to put your hands together for appreciation? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I think dinner is ready for those who are eating.
Okay, so please have your tickets ready.